Why, hello there, everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of Two Wizards and a Mic, where a couple of old dudes talk about D&D and a bunch of other stuff surrounding the game, because, as we always say here, it's just a game. Hello, Andrew.
Hey, Shane. How you doing?
We are recording early in the morning. It's, 3:30 in the morning, so, we just want to make sure we get this one out the door. It's been a crazy week. I know that something happened. There was some thing, that object arrived at your home that looks cool. Explain what that is again.
Yes, we have the first copy of the World of Mirror campaign setting book. And even better news is we were able to start ordering those. And one of them, because the UK mail system is so good, and because we have a printer in the UK, the first book has even arrived in the Orkney Islands, of all places.
That's very cool, actually. The chances of that happening in a campaign of any kind is just going to be quite remote. But I love it. That's kind of awesome.
Yeah. So
shout out to the Orkney Islands.
Yeah, there should be a few books arriving in the US, Canada, the UK, a few more before the end of the month. And then most of the books will be arriving next month. And the other good news is the next Kickstarter, the adventure book, the Mushroom King book, that one, the PDF should be ready next month, and printed books probably in October.
Very cool.
So yeah, we're actually ahead of schedule with that adventure book.
I'm excited about that one, because I know that I support all of the Kickstarters, and I expect product. I don't want to be one of those guys who has to suffer with no product. No, I'm kidding. We've complained on the show many times about Kickstarters that don't go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But this week we're talking about Lycans. We're talking about shapeshifters and all kinds of cool stuff. Why did we pick this topic this week? Is it because of a certain reason? I'm just making sure.
Well, it's true. There was the super blue moon this week. That's true.
I saw it.
Yeah, I think it's one of the really interesting monster types, and doing a bit of research about it was eye-opening. So lycanthropes are shapeshifters who get their power from this curse, and the transformation then later of them turning into a beast-like creature usually happens during the full moon. This often is referring to a werewolf as far as the type of lycanthrope. And this is actually really widespread in European history. It came out around the same time as people worrying about witches being around. And just like the witch hunts, there were people who were accused of being werewolves or riding wolves or charming wolves. In Greek mythology, there's actually a story of a group of people in the wilderness who once a year would change into wolves for a few days and then would change back. And there are numerous accounts of people saying that they'd seen and encountered werewolves. There also was so much, it was such a part of the culture that it actually made it into law. In medieval Europe, there are some laws. There were laws that said, it was illegal to be a werewolf, and laws that said if you were a werewolf, you weren't allowed to bite people and pass on the curse.
Oh, please. I want to know if there's law around vampires, if there's law around Mushroom Kings, maybe.
I've never heard of any laws with vampires, but it is interesting that it actually made it into law. It also reminds me, when I was in school, in middle school, basically, there was a short story. I tried to find it. I haven't found it yet, but there was a short story by an American writer about a person who they're basically alluding to the fact that they'd encountered a werewolf. And then after we read it, we had to debate in our class whether or not we thought that they were just talking about symbolically this was like a werewolf, or were they actually saying that they really encountered what they really believed what was a werewolf? And what happened was, it was like, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie 12 Angry Men, but I
Oh
love
yeah.
that. So I love that dynamic of being on the side where, you have to try to convince everybody else. Um, and that's what happened in this debate. It was the teacher and I ended up debating that the writer was actually saying that they'd encountered a real werewolf, and that's what the story was about. And the class, the rest of the rest of the class were like, "That's ridiculous. This is just a symbolic, statement." So I'll never forget that, because we were trying to find all this proof that that he was actually saying that he'd encountered a real one, and therefore he believed that werewolves were real. Yeah.
That's kind of cool. I have a vague memory of having some debate like that back in English in like grade 10,
Hmm.
when we were looking at like fantasy novels or something. I forgot exactly what it was, but that's very interesting. Did you win the debate?
I don't know. I remember it was a very heated debate. Like, people couldn't believe that we were arguing this, that it was possible that there really was a werewolf. Um, yeah, so I suppose it's not surprising I ended up writing all these books about monsters. Um,
That's awesome.
so in D&D and fifth edition, the mechanic of, if you get bitten by one of these lycanthropes, you can choose to fight against the curse or you can embrace it. So um, if you fight against it, you have to make a con save. And if you fail, when there is a full moon, oh, actually, first you have to make the save to see if the curse is being transferred. So if the curse is
Right.
transferred and you get it and you fight against it, on the full moon, you can't control it and you shape change.
Right.
If you accept it, you then take, actually, either way, you take on, if you get the curse, you take on some abilities of the lycanthrope, which are listed in the monster manual. And if you accept it, you actually take on their alignment as well. So the way that I would run games, to me, player characters who are evil are game breaking. So if you were an evil lycanthrope, I would then take over that character and the player would lose that player character. And I would actually make this more difficult. I wouldn't make it so, I should say, to get rid of the curse in the mechanics, you can cast a remove curse spell and then that's it. I would make it more difficult. I would have the person have to go on a quest, which I've done before, to get
Right.
rid of the lycanthropy, to heal the lycanthropy. Much like in Skyrim, if you go full vampire, before you go full vampire, actually, sorry, when you do get the full curse and it's active, you have to go on a quest to get rid of it.
Yeah, I had that happen. The first time I played,
Yeah,
I think it was Oblivion, where I was fresh in the game. I just did what I normally do. I wander off to some
right.
direction and just kind of just explore. And I wandered into like a tower of some kind, and next thing I knew, I was turning into a vampire. And I hadn't noticed the message in the top corner that said
Right.
"You're feeling funny" or
Right.
whatever that was. And next thing I know, I'm getting hurt in the sunlight. I'm like, "What is going on? Why am I getting damage?"
Yeah.
But I think in a game actually, I think I became a lichen at some point, or I was infected. I'm trying to remember what game that was, but I do remember that there was a minor quest to go and actually get rid of it. But I can't remember what
Yeah.
character that was.
In Skyrim, there is a specific quest, and it's a good one. And if you succeed, then you're cured of your vampirism. So I would do the same thing in D&D, and I have before, if somebody gets lycanthropy. The other thing, all of the lycanthropes in D&D, the mechanics, you either have a humanoid form, and I would actually make it only humans. I wouldn't have like a werewolf elf. I think that's kind of silly. Um, you have a hybrid form, which is like half of the beast and half human, and then you have a beast form. and you're immune to non-magical weapons that aren't silvered. So magical weapons can damage you, but if you're just using a regular weapon that hasn't been made with silver, then they're totally immune to it. So for low-level characters, that's extremely dangerous to deal with because you're not likely to have silvered weapons. The one thing that makes them less powerful for most of the time is that they don't usually have armor. So their armor class is quite low. It's usually 10 or 11. So that's interesting. That makes them not as powerful. So there's 5 basic lycanthropes in the monster manual. The werebear, which is the only good lycanthrope, which ties into, I believe, the werebear character in The Hobbit. Yes. I think that's where they were inspired from. And it is the most powerful lycanthrope as well in the monster manual, CR5. They're very perceptive, they're loners, and they're wardens of nature. So this all connects to that character in The Hobbit, which I think is...
Bjorn, I think is his name.
Yeah, which is, I think, this is where it comes from. And we have a monster in the Monsters of the Wilderness called the Beastmaster, who's similar to this as well, but not exactly the same. Then there's the Weirboar, which is a really nasty neutral evil lycanthrope, CR4. It's relentless, so it's got some extra abilities. It uses heavy weapons, obviously. It lives in remote areas, usually in the woods. And the weird thing about what they said in the monster manual is that it allies sometimes with orcs, which doesn't make very much sense, unless they were saying that because orcs are sometimes pig nose, like have kind of a pig nose, they're doing some sort of relationship there. To me, that doesn't really fit. One of the most common lycanthropes is the wererat. They're not super powerful, CR2, lawful evil, so they're more organized and they have a more structured hierarchy. They're usually in a group, a clan, like a thieves guild. They're stealthy and cunning. They often live underground in like the catacombs and often with rats and giant rats. So these ones are a very common, archetype and something in stories that's been around for a long time. And then we actually have the Rat King in our Monsters of the Wilderness book, which is a more powerful wererat.
Yeah.
The next one is the Weird Tiger, which is the only neutral one. CR4, they have a pounce ability as their cats. They're hunters and warriors, and they're haughty. Now, that actually does make sense if you know something about big cats, because in my experience in Africa with them, when they see you, they give you this look like, welcome to my kingdom. Like they are completely fearless, and they just stare you down, and they're very regal. Whether it's a cheetah or a lion or a panther, they give you this look, and they are supremely confident in what they can do.
Well, so, I've seen those videos of like not wardens. Yeah, I guess they're wardens, game wardens in Africa, and there's the cats that are very docile or fairly tame, I guess. Yeah. And but I remember watching this video of like the guy going, okay, I see him, he's over there. You can just sort of, he has a camera and he's looking, you can barely see it. And he goes, watch this. He turns around, he puts the camera this way, and the cat's like, and then he turns around again, the cat stops, and then eventually it pounces on him, and then they play. But it's fascinating that they don't care. It's like, if you're looking at him, we'll stay here. It's all good. Yeah, that's kind of awesome. So
one time I saw them. Yeah, I've seen them totally in the wild, and then one time I saw them in a game park, and they brought us in a vehicle there, around the area. And the one area, there were a whole bunch of them on the other side of this big cage, basically. And as we, were watching them, they're just there, just kind of hanging out on the grass, just kind of looking at us. There were a bunch of them and giving us this look. And then as we left, they kind of watched us like, okay, bring some more humans by. Thanks for coming.
But don't have the cover on the car. Just leave it open. Be fine.
So the haughty makes a lot of sense. The weird thing they say in the monster manual is that they don't like to pass on their curse, which is just dumb because that's like every time they bite someone, a lycanthrope, there's the chance they could infect them. So they're going to not bite someone? No, that doesn't make sense. If they want to attack or they want to defend themselves, they're not going to not bite. That doesn't make so that makes no sense. The werewolf then is the last one, which is the most common. Chaotic evil, so also the only chaotic one in the monster manual. So just savage and CR3. Pretty tough for low-level characters again. It's the most pure archetype of the lycanthrope. They are sometimes in packs, sometimes found with wolves or dire wolves. And the odd thing they say in the bio is that they flee civilized lands. Again, I don't think that necessarily would make sense. They're chaotic. They're going to make lots of weird decisions. They're not going to, and they're not, again, they're going to be fairly confident dealing with humanoids in a settlement because not many are going to be able to deal with them. So that doesn't really make much sense.
It's like the book is trying to cater to like a trope, like Beauty and the Beast kind of stuff.
Well, and they're also trying to make this is where 5th edition began. It started to go into, there's really good things about it mechanically, but some of this lore and some of their content, they're just trying to be like, things aren't as evil as they are. And this monster is not as monstrous. And they're just trying to be very politically correct and very just put just kind of, they tone down some of the archetype, which doesn't make any sense because archetypes are indestructible. And if you do that with one, it's just going to come up in another way.
Well, it's just like, toning down, making vampires so incredibly intellectually interesting and this sort of thing, which is fine because, if you're living for 5,000 years or whatever, great. But at the end of the day, they're, you are all cattle and I'm going to eat all of you and it's going to be great. And, that's what they are. Don't water that down.
Exactly. Yeah. The whole thing about, vampires aren't that evil. The fact that they are a vampire, what they do is evil. You can't change that. It's like saying, necromancy is not evil. Like it just is and that's, yeah. And like I said, if you change these things, then something else is going to take the place of it. And the original archetype, which you've now destroyed, basically tarnished, is going to be irrelevant. But you're just going to, it's just going to come up in another form. So,
and suddenly you'll be sparkling in the sunlight.
Yeah. All right. So we've made
you have some additional ones.
We've made a number of lycanthropes in our monster books. So in the Phelan book, we have the Weir Badger, another evil one, similar to a Weir Rat, but kind of a wilderness Weir Rat. That was our idea. They're stealthy. They work in a clan or a group. And I took basically some inspiration from Harry Potter, and I said that they're hardworking because the Hufflepuff house is their symbol is the badger, and it's because it's such a hardworking creature, and the idea of badgering someone. So it's that's where the idea came from. The Weir Fox, this is another one in folklore. I made them chaotic neutral. They're very charming and persuasive. They keep their form secret more than the other lycanthropes. So I like that idea. And then the last one we made in the Phelan book was the Weir Rabbit, because I wanted to have something connected to the White Rabbit from Alice in Wonderland. So I made them chaotic neutral. I gave them a little bit of magic so they could move quickly. So they have the haste spell and they have pass without trace, I believe, or no, expeditious retreat. And I made them a messenger, just like Alice in Wonderland. And then that they're always in a hurry and they're kind of neurotic and they're also timid. So all of these things actually match with the rabbit archetype of what rabbit energy is like.
Yeah, I
And
like
then
it.
Travis did a really cool thing where he was like, "Can I add like an hourglass around its neck on a chain, almost like a wrapper?" Like I think who did that?
Uh,
Run DMC,
oh,
I think, right? I'm pretty sure it was
I
one of the guys
think
in Run
so.
DMC who had a big
Yeah, the
clock
big
around.
clock. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I love the art for this. It looks really cool. Um, all right, Monsters of the Underworld. We have the Werewolf Lord. So for high level characters, these lycanthropes in general are not usually that tough. So I decided let's make one that's a challenge. So this one is chaotic evil, higher armor class, much more powerful, really high hit points. His howl he can use to frighten people, which I like that idea. Um,
Nice.
he has an underground or underworld lair, and he has a bunch of werewolves and lycanthropes in his service. So I like the idea of this like lead werewolf lord who commands this basically his like small army of lycanthropes. I thought that was a cool idea. And he's CR6, so much more challenging.
And that's cool because vampires often have people in their service too, or creatures of some kind. So yeah,
Exactly.
I like that.
Exactly. Um, and people who hide secrets, it's easier for rich people to do that.
Yeah, it's
So
true.
you look at Batman, you look at, vampire nobles, they have the ability, right? They can hide their lair in their mansion or under their mansion. So, that's part of the reason I did that. Monsters of the City, we have another werewolf. So I thought, what if you used one as a spy and they were kind of like a rogue werewolf? So this is CR5, pretty tough, stealthy, higher armor class because they sometimes use studded leather armor in their human form. They have cunning action like a rogue. They're a very good climber like a rogue. They have sneak attack like a rogue. So they're
Yeah,
a very good spy or assassin, and they are active in moonlight and they're very adept at using moonlight to do their work. So I thought that was an
that's cool.
interesting kind of twist. Then we have the Wilderness book. I mentioned we have the Rat King, which is like a head weir rat. We also have the Mere Weir Cat, who's a desert creature. And here's another African tie-in. So I made them lawful evil because meerkats are very hierarchical and organized. They work in packs. Um, they are very good at escaping. So I gave them the escape ability like goblins have. And I
Nice.
said they can camouflage themselves in the desert, which is true. And they're extremely patient. They will sit for long periods of time, like gophers. You might have seen this too, or prairie dogs. They'll just sit by their hole for hours, and then if there's any danger, they just shoot back into their hole.
I experienced that just a month ago. Out on the prairies, I was marveling at just how flat everything was, and I had my
Right.
two dogs with me, and they were very interested in the prairie dog holes. And I'm
Mhm.
watching, 10 feet away. There are two of them just sitting there looking at us, and my dogs are just completely oblivious. I'm like, guys, there's two of them right there. Take a look. But no, they were like, oh no, this hole's fascinating. I'm like, keep sniffing the hole. You're missing, the show. As soon as my dogs even sort of stopped doing that and looking around, they were gone. But
Right.
yeah, those prairie dogs are very patient. Just kind of watch us for quite some time, like a good 10 minutes. It was weird.
Yeah, I remember the last time I saw them, we were flying along the highway in South Africa, and they were on the side of the road, just propped up, just watching, and as we zoom by. Um, yeah.
Zoom.
And I'm pretty sure I made it when you shape change into their beast form that you actually shrink. You shrink to small size if you're cursed, because they're like sort of, I think, weir rats and badgers. Weir bats. I'll have to double check about weir rats. But weir badgers, we made small size. Mere weir cats, we made small size. But if you turn into the beast form, you go into tiny size. I think I put that in there. And then weir rats might be, yeah, weir rats are still medium size. So it's only
Right.
ones we've created that once you're cursed, you're actually going to shrink in size as well, which I think is a neat thing to happen. Um, and then the final one, which was in our newest book, which we published this year, Monsters of the Dungeon, there's the Weir Bat. So I think this might be the last Weir creature because I think we've covered them all now. But I was like, why don't we have the Weir Bat? I love that. And there is a Weir Raven in the Strahd book, which, yeah, I think that's okay, but I don't know how much you would use it. That one seems kind of limited. I think the Weir Bat has more flexibility. We made them neutral evil, so they're very sneaky. CR2, they can fly, obviously, in their different forms. They're hybrid in their beast form, and they shrink again when they go to beast form. They're bat size.
I mean, just like vampires. I mean, that's, you know, when they turn into a bat, I mean, that's essentially them just being, you know, miniaturized.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
So we made them very stealthy. They live outside human settlements. And here's another thing I did was I did a little tribute to the original Batman show, the TV show, because I made them skilled at hand-to-hand combat, which is, you know, like Batman and Robin. And I said they often build their houses or residences above a cave lair, which is a direct allusion to Batman and the Bat Cave. You know, and I love that idea. And you could have, again, wealthy people have more abilities to hide their criminal activities. You could have a noble Weirbat, right? Who you have this sort of Bruce Wayne type figure. I think that would be cool in a D&D story.
Well, especially if you have like a city environment. I mean, you're going to have. Oh man, I could just see that in is it Locks? No, Knox. In Knox, it would be perfect to have Batman flying around.
Yeah, exactly. In a more chaotic city, yeah, we're talking about Knox from our world of Mir. Yeah, exactly. In a city that was more chaotic, like Gotham. Oh, I recently read what that means. I think it
really.
Yeah, it was interesting. I think it means like city of stupid people or something. Seriously, it's something like that. Or I just read an article recently that mentioned something about Batman, and they were talking about how Gotham, you know, it's supposed to be this sinister kind of name, but it really actually, the term comes from, I think it means something like city of, you know,
a village in Nottinghamshire whose inhabitants were proverbial for their stupidity.
There you go.
Or who demonstrated cunning by feigning stupidity. I've never looked that up. Oh, that's research for another day.
I love that. I love that.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, it gives Gotham a whole other angle. But you know, that is one of the reasons that in our setting we have a few cities that are totally chaotic and anything goes. You know, definitely Knox is like that. In the world, that's on the continent of Mir. The other cities are not like that. Wild is a bit like that, but not as much. And then in Zog, the new continent that we built up, yeah, there's Rogan's Gate because it's so enormous. Yeah. It has some elements of that, but there's two cities in Zog that are two very large cities which are like that, which are Rivenhelm and Misthaven. And yeah, and that's fun when you have a campaign where your characters enter a city and you don't know which way is up, and you know the guard are corrupt and the nobles are corrupt and the guilds are corrupt, and the good part of it is you can get away with a lot, and maybe it's easier to hide sometimes in cities like that. So you know, there's good and bad. The good thing about a city that's organized and has some sort of stability is you can safely move about. The bad part is that there might be a lot of restrictions on what you can do. You know, the guard might be over enthusiastic, and the laws might be very harsh. And
Hey guys, have you seen the Bat tonight? No, I haven't seen the Bat yet. Oh, okay, the Bat's out tonight. I heard about it already.
Oh, that reminds me. The other thing I just saw yesterday was Michael Keaton, who played the first Batman in the first Batman movie. He just did a commencement speech at a college in the U.S. And after he'd finished talking, he was just about to leave the podium, and then he goes, "I've just got 2 more words for you." And then he leaned deep into the microphone and goes, "I'm Batman," and then left.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Which I was like, what profound thing? What profound thing is he going to say to these young graduates? I was like, what could it be? I'm Batman.
Oh man. Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. So that's all of the Where creatures for this episode. But is there any final update you have, Kickstarter related or anything else?
The other thing I could say was that the rest of the hardcover books should be mailed in the next week or two. The softcover book we haven't finished setting up, so that hasn't been ordered yet. Hopefully that will happen next week. But I think that most of the hardcover books, and there's not as many softcover books ordered, or sorry, there weren't as many backed, so it's a smaller amount. Those books, all the printed books for the World of Mir, if they don't arrive at the end of August, they should arrive in September, including in Europe. Sometimes the Australian books take a little bit longer. But that's about the farthest place that we ship to anymore. We would love to ship to New Zealand, but the shipping prices have just gone absolutely through the roof. So it's not possible right now. Yeah. Although the American price and the Australian price and the UK price is really good. Canadian, unfortunately, is more expensive. The good thing is our postal system is quite efficient, and it usually moves fairly quickly, and it's usually quite accurate, like you get what you're ordered. The bad thing is that it costs a lot of money, which living in Canada, we're not surprised.
Well, I always defend the postal system in our country because they have to go everywhere. And a lot of our country, you and I we live in a large city, and it's pretty easy to get things. But imagine being someone in a Cawood or in Inuvik or somewhere way up in the north. They still can get your book. So if you're playing D&D and you're way in the north of Canada, you can still get your book. Might take a little bit longer than normal, but it will still get there because Canada Post has to.
It's happened. I've sent a book to Tuktoyaktuk.
Oh, sweet.
I have a regular follower who lives there. And yeah, it's very true. Canada is such an enormous country that costs more to service. And then the other update would be that the adventure book, which I said the PDF should be ready next week. All of the art, all of most of the manuscript just needs another final edit, but all the art, all the maps, all of it is done. It just needs one final edit. So the PDF should be ready next month. And again, the printed books are very likely for October, which is actually a month or two ahead of schedule.
Okay. That's all right. That happens. It's so awesome. It's terrible to be ahead of schedule. I mean, come on. Well, thank you everybody for watching and or listening, and a shout out to Tuck. I'm trying to get there next summer. That is my goals. I want to drive there. Nice. But I will see you all next week, and of course, Andrew, I'll be by to pick up my book soon. I swear, because I think I have at least one sitting in your office somewhere. But thank you, and we'll see you guys next week. You're all awesome. Bye-bye.
Later.